The kitchen, 11 a.m. You walked in with a purpose. Now you are standing here staring at the counter like it owes you an explanation. Whatever you came for is gone. Not the object, the thought. Just gone. If you have ever done that, this video is going to explain exactly what is happening in your brain, and more importantly, why it keeps happening no matter how hard you try to stop it. If this sounds like you're weak, hit subscribe before we get into it. Here's the promise. By the end of this video, you will understand the loop that causes forgetting, and you will have 3 things you can actually do about it. So, let us start with a quick definition. Scientists call this the doorway effect. It's the idea that walking through a physical boundary, like a door or a threshold, can cause your brain to drop certain pieces of short-term information. It's not a memory disease. It's not aging. It's a feature of how your brain manages mental load. Your brain sorts information into mental folders called event boundaries. When the scene changes, it opens a new folder, and sometimes the old folder closes before you have finished using it. That is the loop. You move, your brain resets, you forget, you move again, and the loop just keeps running. Here is what nobody sees happening underneath all of this. Your brain is not just storing memories, it is constantly deciding which memories are still worth keeping active. Think of it like RAM on a computer. When you open too many tabs, the oldest ones get pushed to the background. Your intention to grab the scissors was one of those background tabs, and the moment you crossed into a new room, the system quietly closed it. This is the part that stings, because this is not random. Your brain does this on purpose. It is trying to be efficient. It is trying to give your full attention to whatever environment you are now standing in. The problem is, it doesn't always know what you actually need to hold on to, and so it lets go of things it should have kept. But wait, it gets weirder. The same brain that dropped your intention 5 seconds ago will remember it the moment you walk back into the original room, because the original room is the original event folder. The memory was never deleted. It was just filed somewhere you temporarily could not reach. You know that moment when you walk back into the bedroom and suddenly remember what you needed? That is the folder reopening. That is the brain finding the right context again. And that right there is the entire loop in one move. You move, you forget, you return, you remember, you move again, you forget again. Most people think this happens because they are distracted, but actually it is not about distraction at all. Research from the University of Notre Dame found that walking through doorways specifically triggered forgetting, even when participants were not distracted before or after the transition. They were focused, they just walked through a door. That was enough. The setup starts with how your brain builds what researchers call an event model. An event model is basically a mental snapshot of your current situation, where you are, what you are doing, and what your goal is. When everything in that snapshot stays the same, your goal stays active. The moment one major element changes, especially your location, the model updates, and the goal that was part of the old model does not always make it into the new one. Here is the hidden cost of this that nobody talks about. It's not just the lost thought, it's everything that comes after the lost thought. The trip back to find it, the time, the frustration, the second-guessing about whether you should even bother, and then the decision you make instead, which is usually to do something else entirely and forget the original task for hours. Here's the one that gets me personally. I once went upstairs for my phone charger, walked back downstairs without it, plugged in my laptop instead, and by the time I sat down, I had completely forgotten about the phone. 3% battery, still died. That is the real cost of one forgotten threshold. And you have done this, I know you have. The stakes raise here because this is where the loop starts compounding. Every time you forget and return, you are burning a small amount of mental energy. Cognitive scientists call this mental friction. Each instance of friction alone is tiny, but they stack. By the afternoon, you may feel mentally tired without being able to name a single reason why. And that tiredness can make you more likely to avoid tasks, which means more things pile up, which means more transitions to manage, which means more friction. That is the loop feeding itself. It feels like laziness because you cannot explain why you were tired, but the mechanism is the accumulation of micro-forgetting events throughout the day. The trigger is simple. Any meaningful change in environment can fire the event boundary signal. It does not have to be a door. It can be switching from a physical desk to a couch. It can be moving from one app to another on your phone. It can even be a loud noise or a sudden change in lighting. Anything the brain reads as a scene change can close the current folder. This is why open-plan offices cause more forgetting than walled offices. You are crossing invisible event boundaries all day long, and each crossing is a small risk to whatever you were just holding in mind. Most people miss this completely. The goal you carry in your head is not fixed. It has a kind of expiry window. The longer and more complex the route between intention and action, the more chances the brain has to decide the goal is no longer the top priority. Add in any interruption along the way, and that expiry window closes even faster. Here is what actually helps, and this is the part that changes everything. You can anchor your intention to something physical before you move. Say the item out loud. Repeat it like a verbal sticky note. The act of saying it out loud encodes it in a second memory channel, an auditory trace, separate from the visual memory of your original room. So even when the visual event folder closes, the auditory trace can survive the transition. There is a second trap underneath this one, though. Even saying it out loud can fail if you are interrupted mid-transition. A text notification, someone calling your name, a sound from another room. Any of those can disrupt the auditory trace before it locks in. So the more reliable method is to carry a physical object. Grab something related to the task before you move. If you need to call someone, hold your phone. If you need to bring a form, put it in your hand before you leave the desk. The object becomes a physical extension of the memory. It is much harder for a scene change to make you forget something you are physically holding. Here is the real answer, and it is simpler than you think. Your brain does not forget because you are failing. It forgets because it is doing its job. The event boundary system exists to help you adapt quickly to new environments. It is the same system that helped your ancestors stay alert when moving from the camp to the forest. Every new environment meant new threats, new opportunities, new priorities. So the brain learned to reset fast. The problem is that reset was not designed for a world where you need to carry a mental to-do list across 17 microenvironments in a single afternoon. And now let us try something right now. This is the Try This demo. Pick one room you are going to walk into in the next few minutes. Before you walk through the door, say your intention out loud twice, not in your head, out loud. Then notice whether you remember it on the other side. Most people find that 2 verbal repetitions before a threshold cuts the forgetting rate dramatically. It sounds almost too simple, but the science behind it is solid. The auditory channel does not reset the same way the visual spatial channel does. If you remember one thing from this video, make it this one. Now let us talk about the 3 practical things you can do starting today. Takeaway 1. Use verbal anchoring before any transition. Before you stand up, before you walk through any door, say your goal out loud. Not once, twice. It takes 3 seconds. It works. Takeaway 2. Use a carry object. If the task involves a specific item, get that item in your hand before you move. You cannot forget to bring the scissors if you are already holding them. Takeaway 3. Design shorter routes. The more thresholds between your intention and your action, the higher the forgetting risk. Reorganize your most commonly forgotten tasks so they require fewer transitions. Keep the charger in the room where you use the phone. Keep your notebook next to your desk, not in another drawer in another room. Reduce the doors between the thought and the action. These 3 things work because they each attack a different part of the loop. Verbal anchoring extends the life of the event model. Carry objects bypass the need for memory entirely. Shorter routes reduce the number of event boundaries you have to cross. You do not need to fix your memory. You need to change your route. And here is the final thought to leave you with. You are not forgetful. You are human. Your brain is running a system that evolved over hundreds of thousands of years. That system is brilliant at many things. Managing a 47-step mental to-do list across an open-plan apartment is not one of them. But now you know the loop, and knowing the loop is how you step outside it. So here is the question for the comments. What is the most inconvenient thing you have ever forgotten the moment you walked into a room? Tell me below. I read every one. And if this video helped you understand something that has been bugging you for years, subscribe. New video every week. Same deal. See you in the next one.